You were listening to Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky speak following his meeting with the Turkish president. Zelensky said that Ukraine's defense minister would be leading those face-to-face talks with the Russians over in Istanbul. Now, their mandate will be to secure a ceasefire in Ukraine. We can now bring in Muriel Domenach, who was the French ambassador to NATO between 2019 and 2024, who was listening to Vladimir Zelensky with me. Now, there was so much buzz this week whether Vladimir Putin would show up or not show up after he suggested these direct negotiations in Istanbul. You are a diplomat. You know how these things work. Is it not normal to start with technical teams, especially when two countries are at war?
Well, the first thing is to show up, and it's a no-show. So Putin is not showing up in Istanbul. Zelensky played it pretty smart. He was smart enough in taking President Trump at his word, in taking President Putin at his word, in saying, I'm a strong man. I'm prepared to come and have discussions based on a sequence, a ceasefire first, that Europeans, together with Americans, helped him, figure out, and now it's on the table. And it's for Putin now to, enter the sequence of discussions, and obviously he's not prepared to.
But we have Russia's former culture minister, I believe, who will be leading the Russian side, the Russian delegation. The fact that these two sides, who have been at war for over 3 years now, the fact that they're going to be in the same room, that is still a positive, isn't it? Even though Vladimir Putin may not be there?
Not only is Vladimir Putin not showing up.
Sergei Lavrov isn't, I know.
It's not Lavrov that's coming. It's not Ushakov. Those men are the men in charge. It's Medinsky. And Medinsky in the Russian system is not just a nobody. He was the man that headed the Istanbul talks back in 2022, talks that led to an impasse, a dead end. Why? Because of the three traps that were involved in this sequence. One, that no ceasefire was part of the discussion. So basically the Ukrainians were discussing under actual threat. Two, that the talks did not include anything on territories. It just, referred to discussing territories again in 10 years. And three, and that's a key thing, because those discussions involved a demilitarization and sort of denazification, as the Russians put it, of Ukraine. So those form sort of a dead end that would be a danger today. So that Putin not only did not show up, but also that it's Medinsky that headed the former discussions and a propagandist of Soviet Ukraine. Medinsky was born in Ukraine. He's a hawk, a nationalist that amplified the Russian narrative on that notion that there is no such thing as Ukraine. It was a creation from the Austrian Empire. Is showing that Putin is not truly involved in whatever President Trump expected him to engage.
Let's talk about the U.S. President Donald Trump, because he said that nothing's going to happen in Ukraine until he himself meets with Vladimir Putin. Is that a fair assessment? That nothing is going to happen with Ukraine until Donald Trump meets Vladimir Putin? That's what Donald Trump said today.
Well, nothing is going to happen unless Russia is prepared to deviate from its initial objectives in this war that have proven impossible. One, and that's what Russia calls the root causes of the war, the коренные причины. The root causes of the war being one, NATO enlargement, to a free, sovereign, and democratic Ukraine. Russia has not moved from these initial objectives of, questioning those developments, a free Ukraine and an enlarged NATO. So as long as Russia is not going to move from that, it's not going to be a genuine peace process.
But given that Donald Trump and members of his cabinet have openly said the reality of Ukraine joining NATO is unrealistic. Given that shift in stance from Washington, do you think that would be more palatable for the Russians now, even though nothing is put on paper?
NATO's enlargement to Ukraine was not the subject. It was NATO's previous enlargement that Russia is willing to question. So the root causes, as the Russians put it, are NATO's enlargement. I mean, the current security order on our continent that Russia is willing to challenge. And two, a free and democratic Ukraine. Yes, free to choose its own security arrangements that, by the way, Russia itself recognized in 1990 at the Paris meeting of the OSCE. So the perspective of Ukraine joining NATO was always a perspective. It's not on the table now. It's for Russia now to show preparedness to enter a discussion based on the sequence that Europeans have set up together with the Ukrainians and the Americans. Now, the silver lining in this is that the Europeans are back in the game. After Trump took office, Europeans showed stunned.
Are they back in the game? Because Donald Trump thinks that nothing will happen without him meeting Russia's president. So once again, I feel that Washington is sidelining Europe.
Washington is showing impatience, and they should. I mean, to a certain extent, Putin is not being playing fairly. So Trump's comments, I would hear as, he's bringing pressure again, which the Americans are prepared to do together with Europeans, with that, plan to reinstall sanctions, especially on the Russian Phantom Fleet, if Russia does not enter serious discussions. So Trump's comments, I would take as a increased pressure on Putin that he has to deviate from his initial objectives. But no matter what, nothing is going to happen on Ukraine and European security without Ukraine, the Ukrainian president and the Europeans. And I think that's where the Europeans managed to sort of swim against the tides, and be back in the game after that terrible scene in the Oval Office, helping, Zelensky to handle the American president, showing preparedness for a ceasefire that Russia and Russia only is refusing today.
Because since that Oval Office disaster of a meeting, we've had Europe, Paris and London specifically, who've been creating this coalition of the willing. But Donald Trump has been a bit more elusive on what role the Americans will play. But Europe always says, whenever Europe speaks, that it is in consultation with Washington. So what are you hearing on that front?
It's truly in consultation with the Americans. You could see the 4 European leaders in Kiev last weekend, calling their American counterpart and bringing a serious security offer to Ukraine if we end up striking a deal. So Europeans have managed to, one, support Zelensky in offering, a sequence. Two, they've succeeded in offering serious security guarantees that obviously are agreeable to the Americans. And yes, I think they're back in the game at the table. It's up now for...
you think at the table?
Well, it's a virtual table. There's many tables. I mean, there's 3 meetings taking place today in Turkey. One is in Istanbul, technical discussions. One is in Antalya with NATO ministers meeting, and one is in Ankara with Zelensky meeting with Erdogan. We heard Zelensky's comments, and I think that a third man is entering the game. Recep Tayyip Erdogan is good news for Zelensky. Zelensky, with European support, has managed to gather support from different leaders. We've seen President Lula from Brazil calling President Putin to try and convince him to fly to Istanbul. We're seeing now that President Erdogan, also for internal reasons, is keen to help strike a deal. So that's sort of win in Zelensky's back.
You heard there from Vladimir Zelensky that he's calling for more sanctions on Russia, and this is something that European leaders have been threatening all this week after that ceasefire never got imposed. But honestly speaking, have sanctions really worked, considering that we have had this war that has gone on for so long now, over 3 years? When the war first broke out, I remember Ursula von der Leyen coming out with these raft of sanctions. We've even sanctioned Russian oligarchs, thinking that would influence Putin's thinking. That didn't happen. We had the former US President Joe Biden, who said he's going to turn the ruble into rubble. That didn't happen. So realistically, are sanctions the way to go about it? Shouldn't more of a push be put for the on the diplomatic front?
I assume diplomats are doing both. The
Because
Russians,
up until now, they weren't talking really. Until Donald Trump came back into the picture, diplomats were not talking.
But Russia's not winning on the ground, even with, the Ukrainian army suffering. The Ukrainians are managing to do a good job, on the ground. They're waging a drone war. They're losing less people on the ground. The Russians are not doing so well.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, it's like the Russians initially thought they would seize Kiev in 3 days, even deployed, as they entered Ukraine, parade troops like Garde Républicaine, lightly armed in Kiev. They're not making it. So again, Putin overestimated Russia, his army. He underestimated Ukraine. He downplayed Europeans and allied unity. And I think he's doing that just again. He fell in the trap he tried to set to Zelensky and is now on the defensive, trying to argue that he's prepared for talks. But again, his initial objectives have not changed.
You mentioned that now Ukraine's NATO membership is not on the table. But yet we have European leaders like the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who said just a few weeks ago that Ukraine is on an irreversible path to joining NATO. Given that NATO gets its marching orders from Washington, do statements like these give Ukraine false hope?
Well, I think it's key that Europeans act as adults. And yes, from the UK's perspective, as we hear from Keir Starmer, from the French perspective, I assume, it's key that we speak as adults based on our own security interests. Obviously, for Europeans, our security is being played in Ukraine. We have to be at the table. And yes, it's our interest that Ukraine joins NATO. So it's only legitimate that Europeans express their positions in this respect. Now, we're realists. I've served at NATO a long time. I know for sure that as much as you can resist, especially if you're a French diplomat, to U.S. pressure at NATO, if the U.S. Expresses that something is not on the table, it's not at the table for the moment. Now,
really?
From a European perspective, yes, Ukraine's path to NATO is irreversible, and I think it's only legitimate that this is voiced.
If you recall a few
And
years...
if your question is that a provocation to Russia? No, Russia never needed a provocation to wage wars.
Because you were a former French ambassador to NATO, I have to ask, a couple of years ago we had the French ambassador who made some controversial comments on NATO where he called it brain dead. Emmanuel Macron made those comments. And just from your perspective, being French ambassador to NATO, has the body, the military alliance, woken up? And what are the challenges under Donald Trump's presidency?
Huge challenges, obviously. Huge. There's a trust issue, but every cloud has a silver lining, right? The silver lining is that Europeans are now prepared to take a greater share in our own security. They're playing collective. There as well, Europeans, as stunned as they were initially when President Trump took office, are now playing fast, smoothly, and collective. We've seen the four main European leaders traveling to Kiev, showing unity with President Zelensky. We've seen the Russian reaction to that. We've seen a massive disinformation campaign here in France with,
on the train.
On that, train.
The picture with Macron.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously connected to...
It was a piece of a tissue paper, right?
Right, of course. It's a tissue, and the Élysée made a smart response. This is a tissue. This is European unity, and obviously the Russians are reacting to this show of European unity in support to Ukraine. So...
I saw that video and I could tell it was tissue paper, so I don't know what
anyone could see it's a tissue paper. I mean, it was a total joke. So anyway, the good news for the transatlantic alliance is that Europeans are now prepared to do more for their own security, spend more on their defense, rearm. The Commission has issued a serious plan to rearm, and that's only in the interest of a stronger alliance if the two components, show a greater force. So the silver lining is the Europeans are prepared to do more. The other silver lining is the Europeans have learned to handle President Trump. And have empowered and supported President Zelensky in doing so. So I wouldn't be so pessimistic as to the transatlantic alliance. But yes,
it's good
challenges I would recognize, of course.
The challenges, but there are silver linings. Madam Ambassador, thank you so much for coming in and speaking to us on the program today.